This is Leandro with the Educated Barfly, and we're having a drink with Cinemills TV. So pull up a chair, grab a drink, and hit that subscribe button.
Leo DiMonriva, thank you for coming through today.
Thanks for having me.
So your platform, the Educated Barfly, is something that I personally love, our team loves, and you know, our audience may or may not know about you, but you are really what I call a black belt bartender. And I know the term mixology is used now, but you're really a bartender, and you have what I call the technical floor for bartending down.
Right.
But you mentioned to me there's an art and a science to bartending. Explain a little bit about the technical, and then tell us a little bit about the art of bartending.
Well, okay, so the technical, like down and dirty, you know, kind of drink making is a little bit different than just like the art of bartending, right? So like the down and dirty, just, you know, kind of science behind drinking is really just figuring out, you know, really approaching bartending or drink making from a technique kind of space, and really figuring out what those little touches are, how the ice is reacting in the drink, how everything is mixing, the different densities of your ingredients, you know, and then also those little touches, like if you're making a mojito, you know, instead of just adding like lime juice into there, you know, maybe putting some, you know, quartered limes in there, and then when you muddle it, you're getting a lot of the oil out of that peel, and so you get this really nice, what I like to call three-dimensional, just like intense flavor of lime without overdoing the citric acid in your cocktail. So you're keeping everything in balance, but it's just so flavorful, and it's really an experience for someone to drink it. So that's what I would consider like, and so the drink making is really focused on that. The art of bartending is really about hospitality, more so than just your technical skill behind the bar. You know, I always used to say that bartending is 90% hospitality and then 10% skill and talent. And I think that that's really the most important thing. You are the MC of someone's night, and you want to make sure that you're curating an experience for them.
So you have to romanticize the drink that you're making. Is that fair to say?
Well, I mean, you got to be a bit of a salesman, right? So yeah, I think that there's a romantic quality to cocktails anyway. Cocktails have a really long history, and so really knowing the history behind that, you know, kind of being very knowledgeable about the drink kind of adds to the romance a little bit. Yeah, and it really adds to the experience of someone drinking it. And to the people that come to my bars are really, really interested in that type of stuff. So it's really easy to sort of kind of talk someone's ear off about history and a little bit about technique, and really, you know, when you're experiencing something, you appreciate it more if you understand it, right? It's like Americans in soccer, right? So Americans, they look at soccer, well, maybe less so nowadays than it used to be, but they look at soccer, they don't know what they're looking at. And so they don't really appreciate it as much as, say, like American football, right? But if you really, really, really understand what you're seeing or what you're experiencing, it just adds to the experience.
Right, and we've all been to crowded bars where everybody's vying for the attention of the bartender, right? So how do you not sacrifice the science of it and increase the speed? Is there techniques? Is the bar back an important function of that speed, that turnover?
Well, I mean, I think that what we really got to unpack is why everybody wants something really fast. So like our society is so geared towards not making people wait for things and having just like, you know, just like gratification instantaneously. And the thing is that things that are worthwhile take time. And what I find kind of an interesting dynamic is when someone goes into a restaurant and there's this really famous chef, let's say like, I don't know, who's a famous chef? Wolfgang Puck is right on the top of my mind all the time, but I don't know, someone like Wolfgang Puck or Gordon Ramsay or something, they will wait to the ends of the earth for their meal because they know that they are gonna get something special. But when it comes to drinking, everybody wants something now. The thing is that making a great drink is a lot like making a great dish, and you know, good things kind of come to those people who are willing to wait. That being said, part of bartending and part of that hospitality experience is being a really good time manager and making sure that everyone feels taken care of. So when that guy walks up to the bar and it's a busy bar, you're 3 deep, you want to make sure that that person knows, whoever it is, guy, lady, that person knows that they're going to be taken care of, that they've been acknowledged and they're going to be taken care of.
And the bar environment, people are drinking, people react to alcohol in so many different ways, and it brings out some of the laughter, but it also brings out the most obnoxious people in the world, right?
Right.
What's the proper way to get a bartender's attention in a crowded bar? And what is not the way to do it?
All right, so I think I'm going to approach this question from like the what not to do first, because there's so many don'ts, and then also the thing that you're supposed to do requires a little bit of trust on your side. So you don't flash money, you don't snap at the bartender, you don't go, "Hey, bartender," because all of that is just like when you walk into the bar, you might not know this, but I am instantaneously aware of every single person that is in front of me. I know exactly that I know what order, like if you're like worth your scratch as a bartender, you know what order people are getting, who's on their first or second round, who just walked in, who's been waiting a while. It's all sort of taken care of. The thing is that from the customer standpoint, it's kind of hard to trust that because there are a lot of bars that you will walk into and like money talks. Like you walk into a nightclub, you got to flash your money around. If it's 10 deep at the bar, you're going to be waiting quite a bit. And so you're going to have to try every single thing in the book to try and get the bartender's attention to get a drink so you're not waiting at the bar for 40 minutes. But when you're in like a cocktail bar,
throwing the fazul down on the bar is a no-no.
It's
right?
a no-no. And the thing is that all you got to do is you walk into the bar, you make eye contact with the bartender, you keep that contact for 30 seconds. You know that guy has seen you. You know that when you make eye contact with someone, that person sees you, and then you just wait. And I know that takes a little bit of trust on your end, but I promise you get your drink in a proper amount of time.
Right. And you mentioned nightclubs, and you cut your teeth in the nightclub bar atmosphere, which is a whole different thing than some of the higher end cocktail bars that you are now teaching people to work in, and also you have worked in, and you really come from a royalty in the bartending world with Sasha Petrosky, who is kind of the godfather of mixology and the new bar movement. But let's go back to your nightclub era.
Right.
and it could get real douchey in these meat market nightclubs, right? And you hear these crazy drinks like prairie oyster or bloody tampon or a horse jizz. I mean, what these types of funny, adios motherfucker, these types of drinks. What is the appeal, you think, to these type of silly kind of drinks that a lot of bartenders make?
Well, I mean, I think that I don't know, the adios. I mean, the whole idea of the adios is that you're going to get really drunk when you drink it, and that's kind of the appeal. But I think a lot of these drinks are just sort of like they're kind of tongue-in-cheek jokes, but they're also kind of designed to be done very fast in a very fast-paced atmosphere. And I think that that's really sort of the appeal of those drinks. That being said, the cocktail movement is still pretty, I don't know, it's hard to sort of like parse this all out, but the cocktail movement is actually a very old movement that started in the 1800s. But at some point, industry kind of took over things that we wanted things to be fast, we wanted things to be cheap, we wanted to turn a profit. And after Prohibition, right, a lot of the art of cocktailing didn't really come back, and so it kind of led to many, many years of using, stuff made with high fructose corn syrup and just sort of like artificial sweeteners and juices that are not fresh, and so this kind of going back to the roots of cocktailing is sort of a new thing still, right? It's like the late 90s, early 2000s was when this really started to pop off. And so a lot of that kind of old school style of bartending of just like quick and fast is still, kind of permeating through the bar culture. That being said, the cocktailing movement is coming to nightclubs now. So there's a lot of nightclubs in like Miami and places like that where they, like Broken Shaker actually is a bar from Miami that's also in different hotels around the country now that actually kind of took that nightclub aesthetic and turned it into a craft kind of movement and sort of melded the two worlds together. And a lot of nightclubs are doing that now. And so you'll see a lot of really, really fantastic cocktails in nightclubs.
So you're not going to order an Irish car bomb there. You're going to have maybe an old fashioned is what you're saying.
You know what they would probably do though is that they would have some cheeky play on an Irish car bomb, which I actually got in trouble for using the word Irish car bomb because people would like, that's like ordering a 9/11 special to some people. Like, it's like kind of a passé sort of drink, but they would just take that drink and they would make their own play on it, and it would be a little bit cheeky and a little bit fun, and then also maybe upping the quality a little bit from just adding things together in a glass.
One of the things you told me that stuck out is that a real good classic cocktail only has about 5 ingredients. Is that a fair statement? Or
I mean, here's the thing. There's a lot of really great there's a lot of really great cocktails that have more than 5 ingredients, but my benchmark for my own work is using 5 ingredients and under. Because for me, anyone can take 12 ingredients and balance the flavors, right? The more you add to it, the more complexity you have because you're just adding more stuff. For me, the art of like the pinnacle of bartending is taking a limited amount of ingredients and creating an experience, a drink that is layered like an onion, right? Like all of these different flavors are revealing themselves as you drink it. The drink is evolving as you go. A lot of thought has been put into it. It's balanced. It's not too sweet. It's not too tart. It's not too alcoholic. It's just a very, the whole point of kind of balancing flavors is that you're creating a new flavor because it's not just about the lime, it's not just about the sugar, and it's not just about the whiskey or the gin or the rum that you put in there. It's about the culmination of those ingredients to create an experience.
yeah, and that experience is really special to a lot of people because it's their night on the town, and as a bartender, they're putting that experience in your hands, and so you not only have to be quick with your turnaround because it's a business you're operating, but you also have to be technical. And then you have the art portion, which you refer to as hospitality. Tell me is that something that can be learned, hospitality, or is that just an innate attribute you have inside oneself?
I mean, that's a great question. And honestly, there are those people who think that anyone can learn anything. And then there are those people who think that there are people who are just talented at hospitality, right? Just people, I guess. I think that it's a little bit of both. So if you have natural people skills, you're going to do really well as a bartender because at its core, it is a job that concerns people and your relationship to those people. That said, those people who aren't situated into like a hospitality mindset can absolutely learn it. And the thing is that everyone has innate talents, and how do I phrase this? Like every single person has an innate talent or a unique spin on everything that you try. And so as you do it, you will probably uncover talents you didn't know that you had. Like I didn't really know that I was going to be a good bartender when I started. I was just really interested in what I was doing, but that interest sort of fueled a passion. And then it just sort of came out that I was a good people person and I had regulars, and I found those talents as I went. And I think that, halfway you probably could learn it, but having natural talent is that's a plus,
Right. And so you can develop those skills as you go, but to a young guy who wants to break into the bartending world and do it at your level, at the black belt level, do you recommend they just dive into bartending, or should they start, where would you start?
I mean, I'd start as a barback, which is the backbone of the entire industry. As a barback, it's longer hours, it's worse pay, but it is the entry level point of a bar, and it really enables you to understand how not just the bar you're working at runs, but how bars in general run, right? So you are the guy that's taking care of not only all of the juices that need to be made fresh and all the syrups that need to be fresh, rotating the fridges, rotating the citrus, and kind of taking care of the bar on a molecular level. You're also then having to learn all of the different requirements for your bartenders. So if you're working with 2 different bartenders, those 2 different bartenders work most effectively in different ways. And the barback, a really good barback, will figure out where these guys are effective, and then he'll set those people up for the night on their specific needs. And that is a real talent, and it's very, very important, because if you have that, then your bar is running in a fluid motion, and you're always, and that will enable you to turn over your drinks a little faster, take care of people a little more, and it also automates the bartender to really take care of the customer and the drinks, and not have to worry about if the ginger beer has been stocked or that I'm low on lime juice. Like it gets rid of some of the worries that a bartender might have so that you can run in a more efficient manner.
Right. Now, you've also mentioned to me that things like the accoutrements in connection with making a drink, the chemistry is one thing, but also glassware plays a very important part in enjoying that drink. For example, you wouldn't want to put a bourbon in a wine glass. Tell us a little bit about glassware and the importance it serves in enjoying that cocktail.
So glassware kind of falls so it kind of falls into two categories, right? You've got your glassware that's really functional, like a brandy snifter is a functional piece of glassware because the way that the glass is shaped is trapping the aroma, or like when you see whiskey tasting, they use a glass that looks a little bit like a teardrop shaped brandy snifter called a Glencairn, and that traps the aroma, it traps the vapor of the alcohol in such a way that you get the most of the aroma. So aroma is, probably 85% of your flavor is actually through your nose. And so some glassware is functional, and then other glassware is about creating drama for your drink, right? So like whether you use something that's served up or whether you use something that's on the rocks, these are going to be fundamentally different drinks. Something that's served up doesn't have ice in it. It's going to react to the outside temperature and stuff in a different way, but it's also going to create a different aesthetic for your drink. It's going to create a different type of drama, which is what we were talking about a little bit earlier. And so, 50% of your drink is the way that your drink looks, right? The appearance of your drink, the way that it's garnished. People drink with their eyes first. And so that is the person's first impression on a drink. I always say to people when I'm talking about presentation and how important it is, a $1 million cocktail that looks mediocre is going to taste worse than a mediocre cocktail that looks like $1 million, because that first impression, that visual of that cocktail is so important.
So garnishment is a key factor.
Garnishing, and then I would say that glassware and your choice of glassware, whether it's functional or whether it's really just to kind of create drama in the story of your cocktail, is very important and kind of goes in with that garnishing.
Now you mentioned, if you want to break into bartending, be a barback, climb every ugly rung before you get onto the main stage. But there seems to be a lot of these shill bartending licensing program. Is there any regulatory body for bartenders?
There is no regulatory body for bartending. There's no license. There are some classes that will teach you to make drinks and give you a license, but you don't need a license to start bartending. I've never encountered that. It's never asked for. There are things that you do need to have, like there are some credentials that you might need to have. Like for instance, if you're working in a bar that's a restaurant, you need to have a serve safe card so people know that you know how to handle food. Food handler card is really important. And there are some bartenders, some famous bartenders that have put together certificate programs on the internet, but they're not necessary. I highly recommend them though.
Okay. So there is no certification process. No. So all these bartending schools are kind of, how would you describe these bartending schools that people are paying a lot of money to go to?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like $400 for an 8-week program. I don't want to talk trash too much, but I got to say that a lot of the bartending programs that I've seen that are like around LA are bartending programs that teach you how to make club drinks. They haven't really kind of figured out a way to move over to the craft cocktail kind of side yet. And then on top of that, a lot of them don't actually use any alcohol when they're teaching you to make drinks. And so my whole thing is, how are you going to learn about how this cocktail is supposed to look or taste if you're just using colored water? Like,
right.
How are you going to be able to test your balance? Like balancing the flavors, it's not something that I think is very worthwhile. There are a lot of them out there, but there are a few that are really reputable as well. And I just want to stress that point.
Right. And I know you have well over 10,000 hours of bartending experience. So it's really about picking up the rock, looking at what's underneath that rock and learning really hands-on. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just like any other thing, if you want to be a cobbler, you go and apprentice with a cobbler. You don't just start making shoes, right? You got to learn how to make those shoes and then you make them. And I think that bar backing and getting into the bartending industry is just the same as that. The thing is that for a lot of years, bartending was just something you did while your rock star career was trying to take off, or whether you're, or until your acting career was going to pop off. But, you know, nowadays, bartending has become an actual profession, an artistic profession, and something that is an end game plan. You know, when some people, when they become bartenders, that's their goal, you know, and it is a real profession, and it is a good one. It's an artistic one.
I've noticed that. It's become a serious profession now, and there's a lot of big corporate money behind what alcohol is being served, and it's a huge industry. We all know that. But in terms of, if you, Leo, were to make a drink and it was a proprietary drink based on your own chemistry, could you trademark that drink, or is it open domain?
No, it's open domain. And you know what? It's a good thing that you can't trademark it, because imagine if somebody trademarked bolognese and you had to pay royalties every time you wanted to make bolognese. So part of like the trademarking or copywriting stuff, you know, is that you can't do recipes, specifically because recipes should be open source. Now, I'm all for bartenders making money off of what they did, but the thing about cocktails is, by their nature, they are riffs off of other cocktails. So for instance, we can just trace the etymology of a really popular cocktail called a penicillin, right? So you got a penicillin. A penicillin is ginger syrup, honey, and whiskey. That, and then a little bit of scotch on top, right? That recipe is based on another drink called a Gold Rush, right? Created at the same bar, and a Gold Rush is honey, lemon, and bourbon, right? And then that drink is really created from a drink called a Bee's Knees, which is a Prohibition era cocktail with gin, lemon, and honey. So the thing is that everything is a riff off a riff off a riff. Kind of the same way that they say there's only 50 plot lines in movies. Really, there's only 6 templates for cocktails, and every single cocktail, all the multitudes, the cosmos of cocktails that have been made are based on these 6 recipes. So it's the Old Fashioned, the Manhattan / Martini, the Flip, which is like a cream and egg based cocktail, the Daisy. So a Daisy, like a margarita is a Daisy. A Daisy is a drink like a sour, but with no sugar in it. The sugar only comes from liqueur, right? So you've got your tequila, you've got your lime juice, you got orange liqueur, right? And that's what sweetens the drink. So it's the Daisy, which is the sour, and then I guess the sour would be the last one.
Right. Would you consider a mojito a sour, or is that
Mojito is a sour, absolutely. Okay. Anything that has citrus, sugar, and booze is a sour. So the oldest one on record is called a fix, and that would be lemon juice, simple syrup, and gin. The gin fix is probably the oldest sour. That's what created, but everything is a sour. And everything is interrelated. So like a whiskey sour, right? Lemon, bourbon, and simple syrup. And now we do it with egg white, right? But back in the day, it was actually not done with egg white. It's just, right? But then a Tom Collins, right, is gin, lemon, simple syrup, and then with the addition of soda. So it's just you're lengthening it with soda and putting it in a tall glass. But it's still a sour. The basic building blocks are the same.
That's interesting. If I came to you and I said, listen, Leo, I got 10,000 hours of bar experience, and I wanted to work at your bar, what drink would you have me make to test me?
Well, there are 2. All right, there's 2, and they are the simplest drinks that are very, very, very screwed up a lot of the time. They are the Old Fashioned and the Daiquiri. Those are the 2 drinks. The Old Fashioned is a drink that is very simple. It's 3 to 4 ingredients. It can be messed up in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of different ways to interpret it. So when I ask someone, if you come to my bar and you're gonna do what's called a stage shift, get behind the bar, and I'm gonna ask you to make an Old Fashioned, I'm gonna pay attention to how you do it. Do you use sugar cube? Do you use simple syrup? What kind of, are you gonna use bourbon or rye? Are you gonna use overproof bourbon, or are you gonna do an 80 proof bourbon? Are you gonna use a big rock of ice, or are you gonna use well ice? I'm gonna watch all of your different decision making, and I will know exactly where you are in your bartending skill. As far as a daiquiri is only rum, lime, and sugar, all right, simple syrup. The thing is that limes are highly variable in their acid content. So sometimes they're really tart, and sometimes they're really sweet. So if I ask you to come to my bar and you make me a daiquiri, there's 3 different ways to make it so that you can mess with the proportions of sugar to citrus to balance it properly. And what I'm going to want to see, I'll give all of your viewers now the thing. What I'm looking for is they squeeze the lemon I mean, they squeeze the lime and they take a straw and they taste it to figure out where that lime is at. And then they make their decision on how much simple syrup and lime is in that drink based on that taste. If it's super tart, you might want to do 3/4 of lime and then 3/4 of sugar so that you're balancing it out. But if it's a sweeter lime, you might want to do 1 ounce of lime and 3/4 of simple syrup because you want to play up that, because it's sweet enough that it'll balance properly.
So sometimes when I order whiskeys or bourbons, the bartender will say, "Do you want that with ice or neat?" And I always say neat. Ice is for injuries. But is that the right approach?
No, wrong approach, and I'll tell you why. Let's talk about. I'm gonna do a little. One of my friend Chris Day explained this to me in such a concise way. It was so amazing that I'm just gonna copy him right now. So when you add water to your booze, what you're doing is lengthening the flavor profile. And so when you have really high-end whiskey, you actually want to add some water to it. And how much water is up to you, but here's the deal. Let's just say you take 300 people and you put them in a 200 square foot room. And then someone said, pick out the guy in the red hat. It's going to be hard. It's like, where's Waldo, right? There's 1,500 people, or what do we say, 300 people in a 200 square foot room, they're all jammed together, right? But if you took those same people and put them on a football field and said, pick out the guy with the red hat, you'd be able to do it more because they're spread out. And that's what water does. So water, not only does it proof it down, right, a little bit, so you're lowering the alcohol by volume, so you're taking down some of the heat of the alcohol. It's also spreading the flavor profile out. So all of those nuanced flavors that you have inside your whiskey are going to be spread out, and it's going to be easier for your palate to decipher between them. So if you really want to taste the nuances of the whiskey's flavor, adding a little bit of water is always a good idea. Now, there are those people that say when you add ice to a cocktail, the temperature, the coldness of the ice is going to tamp down on the flavor because cold will inhibit flavor. But honestly, not so much with whiskey. What I like to do with whiskey is put a big rock of ice in there because those big rocks of clear ice, they melt a little bit more slowly. You're adding basically a time release of water into your drink so that you're not going to be doing the whole, like, if you're drinking a whiskey for an hour, I'm going to be like, what are you doing, man? You should be drinking this in about 15 to 20 minutes. In that 15 to 20 minutes, you're going to add a little more dilution. It's going to start stiff on the front. It's going to be a little smoother on the back end, and then you're going to get all of those nice flavors. So I think you should add a little bit of water to some whiskeys. That being said, if you don't want to, I support your decision.
Sure. And on your platform, Educated Barfly on YouTube, one of the biggest viewed shows you have is how to make the best crystal clear ice cubes for your cocktails.
Yes.
Do you recommend distilled water or
no? You can do it with tap water if you want to.
Really?
Because the cloudiness, a lot of people say the cloudiness comes from impurities, and while that is somewhat true, where the cloudiness really comes from is trapped gases and air inside the ice. So it doesn't actually matter if you do distilled water or tapped water. I would say use filtered water because you're going to consume it and you don't want to consume all of the chemicals that are in tap water, and if you want to heat your water up a little bit, the heat will actually help the ice to freeze a little bit more clear than it would if it wasn't hot. So using hot, just like if you took some just regular drinking water and bottled water, whatever, and you put it on your stove for a little bit and heat it up a little bit, and then you freeze it, then that's good news. But what happens with freezing, the way that we do it in that video, is called directional freezing. We take a little cooler, right? We rip the top off of it and we put water inside. And what happens is that you're basically forcing your freezer to freeze the ice from the top down, from that exposed side, because it's insulated on all the other sides. And what happens is that all of the clear water, all of the crystal clear ice that's going to form is going to form first, and it's going to push all of those impurities and all of that gas and all of that air down into the bottom. And so after 24 hours, or I like to let mine go for 72 hours, but after a few hours, you will see when you take it out that you'll have a section of clear ice, and then all of the cloudiness is in this bottom, and then you can just cut that away, and then you have your clear ice.
Leo, all this talk about drinking is making me want to have one, man. And I got to tell you, I'm a kettle tonic with a lime guy, right? Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about vodkas. There's a misconception. Are they gluten free like some of these guys purport to be?
Right. So A lot, especially with vodka, and the rules have actually changed, and I actually haven't reviewed the new rules for vodka, so you know, take what I say with a grain of salt. But the whole gluten-free thing is a complete marketing. It's marketing. So Tito's wanted to hop on like the health bandwagon, right? And they just decided like, oh, all these people are trying to find gluten-free things. It's gluten-free is big. I'm just going to say that it's gluten-free. It's made with corn. But what they don't tell you is that gluten, like there's no gluten in any alcohol, even alcohol that's made with wheat or rye or anything. All of that gluten is distilled out. Even someone with celiac disease, like someone who actually cannot have gluten, will still not have any ill effects from any distilled spirit. There's not enough gluten in there to make a difference.
Now, in terms of, let's go down a few of the famous alcohol categories. Tell me what your favorite brand is out of the following. For example, gin. What's your go-to gin?
Plymouth gin.
Plymouth gin.
Love it.
Okay. Whiskey.
I mean, there's so many. I don't have one. For mixing, I really like Old Grandad, 100 proof bonded. I like Wild Turkey 101. Hey man, I like Bullet. There's Bullet, you know, I like Bullet in certain situations too. You know, it really depends on the whiskey, but I have a long list of whiskey. One of my favorite for sipping would be Noah's Mill 114 proof. Just fantastic whiskey made by the Willett Distillery. There are very many different Willets that I'll drink as well. And then also whiskey category is broken down into a bunch of different whiskeys, right? It's bourbons. And then there's ryes. I have like Rittenhouse bonded rye is one of my favorite ryes for mixing and sipping. And then there's also Scotch, which I gotta say that the classic Laddie from Bruichladdich Distillery or the Port Charlotte is kind of my favorite Scotch recently. But there are a lot of Scotches that I mean, Scotches are very nuanced, and you can't. There's not just one favorite.
What about cognac?
Cognac, I don't drink that much. I really like Hine cognac. Fine champagne is really, really nice. I mix with it sometimes. I sip it sometimes. But also what's really emerging right now is the brandy category, right? So cognac is brandy. Brandy refers to any alcohol made out of fruit, whether it's apples, pears, or grapes, right? And so cognac is just brandy that is made in the Cognac region of France, and it's made in a specific way. But brandy, American brandy, is actually really, really emerging right now, and it's showing that the brandy category, which has been relegated to a lot of the backs of people's liquor cabinets, is actually a category of spirit that's emerging as a pretty amazing spirit category and rivaling cognac in quality.
Right. I noticed that Japanese whiskeys are really trending. Is there a way they distill their product a little bit different than the American counterpart?
Yeah, well, so Japanese whiskeys are based on Scotch, but they are not Scotch because they are made in Japan. And so they have their own sort of proprietary techniques that they use. There is a very famous story about a guy, I can't remember whose name it is, that was a Japanese dude that went to Scotland to study and then brought that tradition of, he went and worked at a Scotch distillery for a few years. He learned how to do it, and then he brought all that back to Japan. But I'm not a Japanese Scotch expert, so like a Japanese whiskey expert, so I don't want to wax too poetic on it.
Right, right. You know, it just seems like the whole mixology scene, the bartending scene, and these very advanced cocktails are really, it's almost a culinary movement. Is that how you describe it almost?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, there's a lot of different ways to approach drinks, but just on the level of finding out what the flavor balance is, making your ingredients in intentional ways, and paying attention to the little details is really, to my mind, that's a culinary endeavor. So it's not just about having farmers market cocktails where, you know, you're rotating your fruit seasonally or bringing in different seasonal ingredients or pairing those same flavors with what's in the kitchen. Now that's awesome, and a lot of bars do that, but just on a very simple level, even if you just have 3 ingredient classic cocktails, just making sure that you have fresh juice that's been juiced in the last 24 hours, making sure that you're making your simple syrups with a specific ratio to get the experience out of the drink that you want is a culinary endeavor.
And, you know, when you've had a little too many, right, you know, everybody dreads that hangover the next day. And there's so many myths around beating the hangover. One is liquor before beer, you're in the clear.
Right.
Pop pain relievers before bed. The old hair of the dog, bite the tail-headed a dog, or, you know, but what is the best way to treat a hangover after a rough night of drinking?
Well, the best way to treat a hangover is to not get a hangover, because what you're realizing is that the hangover is dehydration. That's why you're dehydrated. And so there's a lot of things that you cannot do while drinking. Like if you smoke cigarettes, that's going to dehydrate you. If you're drinking lots of sugary drinks, that's going to dehydrate you. If you're drinking wine, like the tannins could also dehydrate you. Well, wine is a real, like my worst hangovers come from wine, more so than cocktails or any other mixed drink really. And then also vermouths, which are aromatized wine with booze added into it, is also, those are also kind of like killers as well. So it's just preparing ahead of time. I kind of feel like the painkillers before bed is when you know you've screwed up, and it's like your last ditch effort not to have a hangover in the morning, and it works about 25% of the time. And then also like Pedialyte, drinking water throughout the night, but then also Pedialyte will give you an influx of electrolytes, and I think that does actually work.
You mean Pedialyte, the stuff you give an infant? That stuff?
Yeah, or old people for dehydration. It's meant to treat dehydration. So if you do that, you're flushing your body with a lot of electrolytes, and you can, I mean, it's like a little bartender's secret, but you can definitely stave off a hangover that way. But it's really about preparing ahead of time. You know what I mean?
Right, right. Well, you know what, Leo, you and I got to go grab a drink, man. This has been great. And how can our audience get a hold of you? I know you're deep online, but do you have obviously an Instagram?
Yeah, we got Instagram, Educated Barfly, and Instagram. We also have the educatedbarfly.com. It's just our website. You can email us there. And then, of course, we have our YouTube channel. We got a couple YouTube channels. We got Educated Barfly, which is the cocktail one, and then we have Barfly Free Pour, which is more like testing bar equipment. We do some like vlog style stuff where we go into people's home bars. I've done a little bit of training with different people on there. It's been pretty fun. So it's just like the extra stuff on that channel.
So one of the producers on the show on Cinemills TV is building an extraordinary man cave, and he wants to have a full bar. And I know you do home bar consulting where you'll actually help design that home bar. Is that something you could help our producer with?
Oh, hell yeah. I could tell him exactly how to lay it out so that, you know, there's like this term mise en place, you know what that means? Like everything in its place in French. And so like behind your bar, you want to have everything situated so that it is the most convenient for working. And home bars are really no different. So yeah, I could show him how to lay everything out, what kind of fridges you want back there, if you have a glass chiller, if you want to have like a little, you know, like there's these little water sprayers that you can put inside, like you kind of embed in your bar so you can clean glassware really quickly and all that. Yeah. I mean, depending on how crazy he wants to get, because really, you can go crazy. Like you could spend $200,000 on a home bar, and I mean, we just did this. We went to this Broadway producer's home bar where he basically created a home bar inside the dining room of his home. Like he sacrificed his entire dining room to make a speakeasy, and it is, I don't even know how much money he spent, but it is killer. I mean, it's
top shelf,
chef's kiss. Yeah, it's the most beautiful home bar I have ever seen.
Educated Barfly, thank you for everything and coming through today. We really appreciate having you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. This was a blast.